please welcome writer, director, producer, and actor Taika Waititi and Time national political correspondent Molly Ball.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Time's Molly Ball. I am honored to introduce Taika Waititi, an extraordinary creator and filmmaker. Taika, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Oh, I've already ruined it. Look at that. Water all over the floor.
Clean up on aisle 5.
It's a big hazard for the next person, too.
So Taika, in his TIME100 essay about you, Sacha Baron Cohen says, Taika has won an Oscar and made successful, hilarious, heartfelt movies, yet he always brings to his work a light touch. You write, you direct, you act, you produce, you do comedy, you do drama, you do film, you do TV. Is there anything you're bad at?
No.
Nothing.
Maths. In New Zealand, we call it maths. You say math.
Math. Okay. Well,
math. Yeah, I'm not good at that.
Losing your mic.
Losing the mic. Nah, we talked about this when we came. We ruined this microphone.
But that sensibility that he talks about.
There you go. My favorite. Okay. Keep going, Molly. I'm listening.
Yeah. That sensibility that he talks about, the light touch, the darkness mixed with humor is sort of your signature. How do you feel like you arrived at that, or where does that come from?
Well, all of my favorite comedies have always had darkness attached to them and been infused with a sense of drama. I think that's really, the closest to the human experience is this mixture of light and dark, and so I've always been interested in that. I don't think I've ever been able to make something that was just a straight comedy. I certainly couldn't do something that's a straight drama. I just find the idea of that either scary, but also I want to enjoy going to work. And I don't want to go to work and be sad all day, and pretend to be sad all day, and then take that home and then actually be sad. Yeah, I think
that's how I approach my job as well.
Everyone's, every day, is a mixture of ups and downs, and I think, when I want to tell a story, it has to be a mix of that. And also with comedy, especially, I think it's one of the most important things that we have. In terms of delivering messages, and I think it's a great way of pulling audiences in, getting them to let their guards down and be part of the conversation, and then you can get into something deeper.
Mm-hmm. Well, we hear a lot of these days about taboo subjects, cancel culture, topics that are too hot to touch. You're someone who literally made a comedy about the Holocaust. Is that something you think about when you're doing a project? Will this get me canceled?
Oh, a lifelong dream, ever since I was a kid. I was like, Mum, you know what I'm going to do? No, that's not something, that in particular was, I felt like was a story that it meant something to me. A lot of my stories are about young people seeing the adult world through the lens of a child. And I thought in terms of Holocaust stories, they need to keep being told, but we need different ways and different approaches to them. You have the very heavy films that we've seen before, which are brilliant, and they delivered a message in a certain way, but if we keep doing them the exact same way, and that's the same with all art, if we never change or pivot or try a new direction, then the story gets old, and that's when I think when people say, yeah, we've heard it before, we know, and then we start forgetting. So when a few years before I made Jojo Rabbit, there was a Guardian survey, and it was, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but basically in America, it was basically young people under 20, it was something like 68-70% of people had never heard of Auschwitz and had never heard of the Holocaust. And if those numbers keep going up with young people and we're not communicating or retelling these stories, and this is less than 100 years ago, then obviously people are like, well, I'll never forget, it'll never happen again. It'll happen again. And so that's the curse of humans, I think, is that we are doomed to repeat our mistakes because, we get in this comfort zone and we never think that we'll do it again. And That's why we have to tell comedies about this subject. We have to get people, we have to adjust the narrative to suit the audiences and the changing audiences.
Well, and Jojo Rabbit, which is one of my favorite movies, is about a young man who's indoctrinated to hatred, authoritarianism, and eventually recovers. Does that resonate?
How sad is it that that film is still relevant?
That is my question, is how do you think that resonates today? What's the relevance of that message?
Yeah, I don't know, like I'm proud of the film. It's, it was a great thing for me, and I really loved telling that story, and again, I think those stories are important. But the fact that we have to keep making content like this it's weird. It's weird that we can't, that we have to keep revisiting these subjects, and even now, it seems like everyone talks about the repetition of this behavior, and it's crazy. Again, less than 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you've worked on little bitty indies movies, you've worked on big budget Marvel movies. How do you select what do you look for in the projects that you decide to pursue?
I look for, when I approach something, I'd like to figure out whether or not someone else could do it. And if I feel like a lot of other people could do the film, then I'm not really interested. I also like to do things where I feel like it's a potential career ender, because otherwise, what's the point? It's like I have to challenge myself and make sure I'm doing something different. I've just finished a second Thor film, but the first one I did, I thought, well, you've had a good run. It was bound to end soon. And I thought the exact same thing with Jojo Rabbit. I was like, well, this is a way to go out. This is what better way to end it all? And then, and so each time I think, well, and I've made a film about the worst soccer team in the world, which is a true story about the American Samoan soccer team. And I don't know anything about soccer or sport other than rugby, and I don't know anything about making a sports film. Again, does it make me feel uncomfortable and nervous? Absolutely, and I think that's when you make the best work. David Bowie said about that, about the creative process. It's like when he likened it to walking out in the ocean, and when you start losing your footing, and you feel the water up around your neck, it's just getting up, and you're like, oh, am I going to go under? And you start feeling just those nerves. That's the sweet spot of creativity. That's when you kind of you sink or swim, and to swim, you've got to come up with the creative goods.
Well, and you do a lot of work in both film and TV. How do you see the difference between the two mediums?
I'm enjoying TV because it's a longer opportunity to develop characters and have more interesting arcs with characters, where someone can switch between being a hero and a villain multiple times throughout the story. But I think really my heart's still with film. I really like the length of a film. But I've been doing some great stuff with TV lately, which has been cool. And also TV is a good opportunity for me to work with other artists and help sort of get their stories made.
Yeah. Well, tell us about some of your current projects.
I'm really
what's
glad
exciting?
You asked, because the one that I'm really proud of, two I'm really proud of at the moment. One is a show about pirates called Our Flag Means Death, and it's a comedy. It's kind of like a workplace comedy about pirates out on the high seas in the 1700s, but essentially it asks the question, like, what is it to be a man? Like, what is it that what's the behaviors of men, and like, what is it to be a man? And that's really, like a lot of people, it's a comedy about pirates. It's actually a love story between two guys who happen to be on a boat, and I'm really proud of that. And then, but the thing that that's really the closest to my heart is Reservation Dogs, which is a show that my friend Sterling and I created, which is, thank you, that's the one person who saw it. And it's set in Oklahoma on a reservation about a bunch of kids being kids. And what was great about that is breaking out of the molds and the traditional ways of seeing Native Americans on screen, which is, everything we're used to is, the stoic Native American in the 1800s, You know, he's either the scout and has like some little tidbit of wisdom for the white guy, or you know, like the drunk Indian, or like, you know, the more depressing view. And you know, Indigenous people are extremely funny, and we have a very funny outlook on life. And in New Zealand, we're the same. Sterling and I had very similar upbringings, and we laugh about everything and everything about how we grew up. And we grew up very similarly. And you know, I think through oppression and through your circumstance, and especially if you're poor, you have to find things funny. And so that's, I think, where a lot of my sense of humor and like the way I view the world comes from. It's coming from, you know, a very humble, small fishing village in New Zealand where there's like about, the population is like, I don't know, when I was growing up, felt like about 600 people. Growing up was very hard there. When you went to a party, the first thing you'd ask a girl is, who's your grandmother? And then you'd end the conversation with, okay, have a good night, cuz. So, you know, so like, you know, and you have to be able to laugh at all of this shit. Yeah, so you know, that's how I'm going to continue to navigate through the world, just laughing my way through it, because it's a joke.
Well, when you accepted your Oscar in 2020, you dedicated it to all the Indigenous kids all over the world. You said, we are the original storytellers. Talk a little bit more about how your background, how your identity shapes your perspective and your work.
Well, okay, so on my father's side, we're New Zealand Māori, and yeah, that's one part of me. And then on my mother's side, we're Russian Jews who managed to escape the pogroms in the early 1900s. Weirdly made it to New Zealand, of all places. I mean, that's as far away as you can get. And then so I have this, you know, two super interesting backgrounds to me, and yeah, both of them have shaped me in various ways. But also, I think, again, two peoples who are from different sides of the planet with very similar experiences. You know, like you know, Māori were colonized many years ago and have, you know, struggled ever since with that. And so I think on both sides, yeah, there's just this but also both sides have got an incredible sense of humor. And you know, sometimes I'll make a film like Thor, and someone will say, like, well, is that a Māori film? You see, you're a Māori filmmaker from New Zealand. Is that an Indigenous film? Well, it is if I'm the one telling the story. And, you know, it doesn't, you know, that's the other thing we're trying to break free of with work. Is like, if you call yourself an Indigenous filmmaker, you don't have to always put a tribal person in your film, you know, playing a wind flute on a mountain, talking to a ghost of your grandmother who's giving you some advice. You know, that's not how we operate in the normal world. I don't go around talking to trees or riding whales. I, you know, just like, if I want to know something or get some advice from an ancestor, I Google it. You know, and we don't all like just carry sage around and like just smudging every time we like go into a room. It's like, you know, I think you've got to like normalize like ourselves and also demystify what it is to be native, because it's like, it's pretty normal.
He seems totally normal, doesn't he?
I mean, we're fashionable too. I like to wear the modern clothes.
I did want to ask you about how COVID and just the general chaos of the past couple of years has changed Hollywood and filmmaking. How do you think it has, and do you think some of those changes will remain with us?
Look, I'm no soothsayer, okay? I've told people this. They keep saying, tell me about the future. I don't know. But I feel like, I don't know, I feel like, I mean, I just shot a film in Australia throughout the pandemic, and everyone was wearing masks. It's very hard shooting a film, directing a film, wearing masks, where you have to go up to someone and say, like, okay, man, that was great. Can you do it like this? Can you just sort of give me this sort of expression? And then just sort of like, yep, okay, cool. And then like, yeah, okay, cool, and action. The communication thing just goes out the window. Also, what I've discovered about humans is that from here to here, every person is beautiful. from here to here, it's a mixed bag. It's like, I think from the eyes down, that's our kryptonite. That's like the sexual kryptonite. Like it's like you get some of the mask, and over a few weeks you form these crushes on people. You're like, God, good God, your eyes. Would fall into those eyes, and then like the few days on set, they say, "Okay, you know what? Today, like, the cases are low in the country, so we're all allowed to take off our masks." And people would take these masks off, and they'd be like, "Good God, put that back on!" Or some like the camera operator would take it off, and a big barista twisty mustache would fly out, and it was like just people are odd. People look weird, and but only the eyes are beautiful.
Well, I'm afraid we're out of time with that, so we'll have
What? What are you talking about?
We will have to end on that.
Thank you.
We'll have to end on that stirring advertisement for chin implants. Thank you, Taika. So great having you.
Thank you, Molly.